He was the second most powerful man in Syria. Armies moved when he gave the word. Kings listened when he spoke. And beneath his armor, his skin was dying by inches, and no physician in the empire could stop it. He had won every battle that mattered. He had never lost to an enemy he could see. But this enemy had no army, no face, no sword to strike down. It simply spread, quietly, patiently beneath his robes, and there was nothing his rank or his riches could do to slow it. His name was Naaman, and this is a story of the day a foreign general, a man used to being obeyed, had to kneel in the mud of a foreign river before he could be made whole. Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram, a kingdom the Israelites simply called Syria. He was a great man in the eyes of his master, highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Syria. That detail alone is remarkable. The God of Israel, the God Naaman did not yet know, had already been at work in his life, granting triumph on the battlefield through a man who did not worship him at all. Naaman was a mighty warrior, but he suffered from a skin disease. In the ancient world, this was not simply a medical inconvenience. It was a slow unraveling of dignity. It marked him as unclean, untouchable, a man whose body was betraying him in full view of everyone who once feared him. Syria and Israel were not friends in those days. Raiding parties crossed the border often, striking villages, carrying off livestock, grain, and sometimes people. It was during one of these raids that a young Israelite girl was taken from her home and brought back to Damascus as a captive, given as a servant to the household of Naaman himself. She would have been little more than a child, torn from her parents, her language, her land, and placed in the house of the very commander whose armies had likely led the raid that stole her freedom. She had every reason to hate the man she now served. She had every reason to nurse bitterness quietly in her heart, to watch his suffering and feel some small measure of satisfaction that the powerful man who had taken everything from her was now losing something himself. Instead, she said something to her mistress that would change the course of Naaman's life. "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria," she said, "he would cure him of his leprosy." It was a small sentence, spoken quietly by someone with no power, no status, and no army behind her, but it carried more weight than anything Naaman's soldiers could offer him. Naaman went to his king and repeated what the girl had said. The king of Aram was eager to help his commander and sent him off with a letter to the king of Israel, along with 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of fine clothing. This was an enormous fortune, the kind of wealth a nation might use to buy peace or purchase loyalty. Naaman assumed, as powerful men often do, that healing could be negotiated, that enough gold could open any door. He carried his wealth and his letter into Israel, expecting the transaction to be simple. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in despair. "Am I God," he cried, "that I can kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." The king's mind raced immediately to war. A letter from a foreign king demanding an impossible cure looked to his frightened eyes like the opening move of an invasion, an excuse Syria could use once Israel inevitably failed to deliver. He did not think of the prophet living quietly in his own kingdom, the man of God who had already worked wonders that the king himself had witnessed, parting waters, multiplying oil, raising the dead. Fear blinded him to the answer that was close at hand. It is a strange thing how often the solution to our crisis is nearer than we realize, hidden not because God has withheld it, but because our fear has kept us from looking in the right direction. When Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent word to the palace. "Why have you torn your robes?" he asked. "Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. It was a grand arrival, the kind meant to announce importance, wealth, and rank. But Elisha did not even come out to meet him. Instead, he sent a messenger with a simple instruction. "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed." Naaman was furious. He had expected ceremony. He had expected the prophet himself to come out, wave his hand over the spot, call on the name of the Lord his God, and cure him. Are not the rivers of Damascus, Abana, and Parpar better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be cleansed?" And he turned and went off in a rage. The Jordan, by any measure, was an unremarkable river, muddy, ordinary, nothing like the clear rivers of his homeland. To wash there felt beneath a man of his standing. His pride had carried him across a border, past a king, and to the door of a prophet, and now that same pride nearly carried him home unhealed. But Naaman's servants approached him and reasoned with him gently. "My father," they said, "if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" Their words cut through his anger. Naaman had been prepared for a difficult task. He had been prepared to prove himself, to earn his healing through some great act of strength or sacrifice. But he had not been prepared for something this simple, and simplicity felt like an insult to a man who had built his life on being extraordinary. Something in his servant's plea reached him. Perhaps it was the gentleness of their tone. Perhaps it was simply that they called him father, a term of respect and affection even as they challenged him. Whatever it was, the great commander, a man who gave orders and rarely received correction, listened to the counsel of men beneath his rank. Pride does not often bend easily, but it bent that day, just enough. So he went down to the muddy banks of the Jordan and dipped himself beneath the water once. Nothing happened. He surfaced, his skin unchanged, and dipped again. Still nothing. A third time, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and still his flesh bore every mark of the disease that had brought him so far from home. Each time he rose from the water and found himself unchanged, his patience must have been tested again, the old arguments rising once more in his mind. But he did not stop. On the seventh dip, he rose from the Jordan and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. The healing did not come at the first washing, or the third, or the sixth. It only came after the seventh, only after full obedience, only after Naaman set aside every objection his pride had raised. There was no shortcut through his own strength, no negotiation. No gold could purchase what only surrender could obtain. Naaman returned to the man of God, he and all his attendants, and he stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel." The mighty commander, the man who had walked into Israel expecting healing like any other commodity, now stood humbled, transformed not only in body but in belief. "Please, accept now a gift from your servant," he said. But Elisha refused every offer. "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." Though Naaman urged him, he refused. Elisha wanted nothing to cloud the truth of what had happened. This healing was not a transaction. It was a gift from the God of Israel, freely given, and it would remain that way. Naaman then made a request that reveals just how deeply his heart had changed. "Please, let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry," he said, "for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord." He wanted to carry a piece of Israel's soil home with him, so that even in a foreign land, standing on ground shipped from the country of his healing, he could worship the one true God. He also asked for a strange kind of forgiveness in advance, that when duty required him to bow in the temple of Rimmon beside his king, the Lord would pardon him for a posture his heart no longer meant. Elisha's answer was simple: "Go in peace." Naaman set out from Syria as a powerful man seeking a cure. He returned as a humbled man who had found something greater than healed skin. He had found the living God. Quick announcement before we continue. After so many requests, the Bible Chronicles Animation course is now available. It walks you through the full workflow from script writing to editing and finishing with music and sound effects, so you can produce your own videos with confidence. If you are ready to start creating, the course is available now. Click the link in the description to enroll. The story of Naaman is both inspiring and deeply challenging because it exposes something in all of us. We often want our breakthroughs to come dressed in grandeur. We want the dramatic gesture, the impressive act, the moment where our own effort earns the miracle. But God's instructions are so often plain, almost embarrassingly plain, and our pride resists exactly what our healing requires. Think about how much Naaman almost lost because of one sentence: "Could I not wash in the rivers of my own country?" How many of us have said some version of that when God's answer to our situation felt too small, too ordinary, too beneath what we believe we deserve? We want the 7-step plan, the dramatic breakthrough, the miracle we can tell an impressive story about. But sometimes God simply says, "Go wash," and our obedience, not our understanding, is what he's after. Notice also who God used to move this story forward. Not kings, not generals. A servant girl with no name recorded, no power, no freedom, spoke one honest sentence and set in motion the healing of a mighty commander. If you have ever felt too small, too overlooked, too powerless to make a difference, remember her. She did not have an army. She had a word of truth spoken in the right moment, and that was enough. God still works this way. He still uses the voices the world considers unimportant to carry the messages that change everything. And notice Naaman's servants as well. Ordinary men without rank who had the courage to speak plainly to their master when his pride was about to cost him everything. It would have been easier to stay silent, to let their commander storm home unhealed rather than risk his anger.